At 29, Satoru has a rough life. He's not making enough money with his manga, so he has to deliver pizza. Satoru may seem normal, but he's got a pretty cool power. Now and again, Satoru will experience a phenomenon he calls revival. Usually happens just before a tragedy. He gets pushed back in time a few minutes, and he can fix the problem before it starts. He can't control it. It happens on a regular day when he's out on the pizza hustle. The revival hits and he notices a passed out trucker who's about to smoke a kid. He saves the kid but gets in a head-on collision with a car. He comes to in the hospital with his coworker, Irie. She gives him mad props for saving the kid. When he gets out of the hospital, he finds his mother, Sachiko, in his apartment cooking. He's not happy about it, but his mom's going to stay with him and take care of him till he gets better. Sachiko gets a little boozy and starts talking about the bad events in his childhood. Back when he was 10, somebody kidnapped and straight moited 3 little kids. Then his 20-year-old homeboy, role model, gets locked up for it. He goes shopping with his mom, and he's hit with the revival again. He's like, "Mom, my spider senses are going crazy." And his mom catches some creep trying to swoop in on a little girl and stares him down. Sachiko's tripping because she straight recognized that creep. Not only that, but the evidence suggests that he's actually the one who kidnapped and murdered them kids. So she hurries home to tell Satoru. But then an unknown intruder breaks in and slaughters Sachiko before she can relay the message. Satoru comes home, finds his mom's body, and freaks out when he sees the knife. A neighbor sees the bloody scene and calls in the popos. The police arrive to bust Satoru for smoking his mom, but he makes a break for it. Then things get real weird, and when he snaps back into reality, he realizes he's just had a really long revival. And he's back in his hometown as a 10-year-old boy, back in 1988 when all the kidnappings and murders of the kids took place. And now he's a man on a mission. He's going to save them kids. And he's going to save his mom from getting shanked in the kitchen. Happy to see his mom back home, he sets out to save the first victim, Caillou. He tries to befriend her. He realizes Caillou is getting abused at home. She's super quiet, and she's got wicked bruises all over her body. Satoru's friend Kenya tells him about a text that Caillou wrote that's called "The Town Where Only I Am Missing." It's just a horrible story about how bad Caillou's life is and how her mom is just awful to her all the time. So Satoru asks Caillou to come to his birthday party. He then finds out that they share the same birthday on March 2nd. He remembers that Caillou was still 10 years old in March of 1988 when she disappeared. He realizes that the 1st of March is when she was kidnapped. Now he has 11 days to save her. He's in the park looking for Yuki, and he runs into his buddy who ends up getting accused for the kidnappings and murders. And they have a great afternoon together. And he's further convinced that there's no way this dude did it. Now he has an incentive to save his buddy as well, because in the present day of his timeline, his friend is on death row for the kidnaps and murders of these 3 kids. He goes to look for Caillou at her house and finds her in the shed, just all black and blue and distraught. Then Caillou's mom, Akemi, shows up, orders her back in the house, and sends him on his way. The next day, Satoru goes and tells his teacher, Yashiro, about the abuse. And the teacher's like, "I already know. And I'm trying to get the youth welfare office to do something about it, and they just won't." Later in class, Caillou is accused by Misato of stealing the students' lunch money. But Satoru and his friends shut her down. After class, Satoru takes Caillou into the snowy forest to show her a beautiful Christmas tree, and they revel in its glory. A few days before she's to be abducted, he invites Caillou to the science center to spend some time with her, and keep her away from her abusive mother. While at the science center, he has some deja vu, and he realizes he's been there with her before. The following Tuesday is the day Caillou is supposed to get abducted, so Satoru spends the whole day with her at the youth center. He walks her home in the evening. Satoru watches Caillou's house until midnight. The next day, while they're shopping for their birthdays, Satoru has deja vu again. They have a great time celebrating their birthdays with their friends. He goes to sleep, happy in the thought that he saved Caillou's life. He oversleeps, rushes to school, and Caillou isn't there. He hadn't stopped Caillou's disappearance. He just put it off for 2 days. 6 days later, Aya, a girl from a nearby school, also vanishes. Despite his efforts, he's not changing anything. A few days later, he sees Caillou's mom just throwing Caillou's stuff in the trash. He freaks out and runs down the street, and then things get weird again. And he reverts back to himself at 29, back in the year 2006. The police are still after him, under the impression that he killed his mom. The manager at his pizza store calls and offers him shelter, but it's a trap. His coworker rescues him because she thinks he didn't do it. The next day, Satoru researches Caillou's disappearance, and he did have an effect on the future, but not enough to save her life. He gets found by his manager and has to move under a bridge. Satoru's coworker gets a frightening message signed by his name. Then smoke starts to roll under her door, and there's a huge explosion in her place. Seeing the explosion, Satoru runs in the house to save her, but she's too heavy for him to carry by himself. Luckily, the manager shows up, and together they carry her out of the house. But Satoru can't go outside because of the police, so he leaves right at the end to go out the back door. But she slips her cell phone in his pocket right before he leaves. After reading the message on the phone, he contacts an old journalist colleague of his mom's. The journalist tells him that all the official reports framed Satoru's old friend as the killer. The journalist says that Satoru's mom was probably killed because she found out the murderer's true identity. Later, he meets his coworker under the bridge, and she says she thinks she knows who set the fire at her house. The police show up and arrest Satoru, and as he's being led away in handcuffs, he sees a bystander who he recognizes and who looks super sinister. Satoru knows he's still got a mission to complete and manages to force a revival back to 1988. He finds himself back in the science center, and it's when he had that first deja vu. So he's in the same timeline he was last time. The next day at school, Kenya promises to help him save Caillou. Satoru and Caillou go through their birthday celebration again. This time he leaves his party for a little while. He goes to the house of his friend who gets framed up and throws a rock in his window so his friend will be busy with the police and will have an alibi for any crimes that are committed. He then goes after Caillou's mother and almost shoves her down the stairs for all the rotten stuff she's done. But he's stopped by Kenya, and Kenya tells him, hey man, there's got to be a better way to do this. They go back to the party. While walking Caillou home that evening, he explains a plan to keep her safe. He's going to kidnap her, with her permission, and she's going to hide out in an old abandoned bus for a few days. On her second night in the bus, a strange man breaks in and spends some time in the bus. She manages to hide and not be seen by the man, but she's still very shaken up by the experience. On March 3rd, Satoru's teacher tells him that he contacted the youth welfare office about Kayu's disappearance and that they're going to make a home visit that night. But when they go, nobody's there. Back at the bus, Kayu shows Satoru the bag that the strange man left in the bus. And when they pour it out, they see all the things that are the kidnapper's tools. And they know immediately they are in the kidnapper's hideout. Then Satoru takes Kayu to his house so she can be safe for the night. On March 4th, after Kayu has the first homemade breakfast she's ever had, she goes home to her mother. But Satoru and his mom both come along too. Kayu's mother freaks out over her disappearance, but in the middle of all her craziness, she's blindsided by the child welfare service officials. She tries to drag Kayu away, but is stopped by her own mother, who breaks down in tears and apologizes for not supporting her in her abusive relationship with her ex-husband, and when she was left by her ex-husband and had to be a single mom to Kayu. She allows her mother to take and raise Kayu, and Kayu thanks Satoru for saving her life. Now that Kayu is safe, Satoru turns his attention to the next two kidnap victims. First, the girl from the nearby school, Aya. Satoru follows Aya to learn more about her. Then he runs into his mom and later his teacher, who offers to give them a ride home with all their shopping bags. Then Satoru discovers that the glove box is suspiciously full of lollipops, which the teacher cannot explain away. The next day, Satoru and his friends introduce themselves to Aya, and she's a little standoffish at first, but she likes Kazu, and he convinces her to take a look at their secret hiding spot. Since Aya is becoming good friends with Kazu, Satoru believes she is in safe hands, so he can move on and try to protect the next victim, his classmate Hirami. Hirami tells Satoru that he had observed Misato being excluded by her fellow students since she falsely accused Kayu of stealing. Thinking that Misato might be a new victim, he follows her to the hockey rink, but loses her there when she doesn't return from the toilet. Then his teacher shows up and tells him that Misato has just left the building. Just then they see a van drive by that belongs to Yuki's family. Yuki is his friend who ends up getting framed for all the crimes. So the two of them decide to follow the van. Once in the car, Satoru's teacher reveals himself to be the real killer, and he's real angry that Satoru has been protecting all the other children and ruining his plans. So he had devised a plan to use Misato as bait and lure Satoru in his car, and now he's got him right where he wants him. The teacher has rigged the seatbelt so Satoru can't get out, and then he drives the car into a frozen lake. And as Satoru sinks into the icy depths, everything goes black. In 2003, Satoru wakes up from a coma, and his mom has been giving his body physical therapy every day for 15 years. His body is making a rapid recovery, but he has a mental block and he can't remember much of what happened in the past. A visit from Kenya and Hirami helps him begin to put the puzzle back together. Kayu also visits him later on, and she's married to Hirami now and carries their baby in her arms. His old teacher has become a powerful politician under an assumed name, and he comes often to visit him, and he takes advantage of his memory loss by pretending to be an old friend. But slowly, the memories are coming back that the teacher tried to kill him and that the teacher kidnapped and murdered the other 3 children in the different timeline. The teacher suspects that Satoru is getting his memory back and takes him to the roof of the hospital and threatens to kill him. But Satoru knows the teacher won't kill him because the teacher is so fascinated with how Satoru was able to divine what he was going to do all those years ago and how he was able to thwart his plans. Satoru wants to test this connection with his teacher, so he attempts to throw himself off the roof, and his teacher catches him, and he cries because the teacher has realized he cannot live without Satoru. And then he decides they will die together, and he lets Satoru go, and then he prepares to jump. But when he looks down, he realizes he has fallen right into Satoru's trap. Satoru had regained his memory days ago and had made a plan with his friends to throw himself off the roof and for them to catch him. And the police are already on the roof to arrest his teacher for trying to kill him again. A few years later, Satoru finally realizes his dream of becoming a professional manga artist. And one day, on his way home from work, he sees his old coworker right under the bridge where he had his final revival all those years ago.